I believe we've got our technology working and we're on time. We're going to get started. Thank you everyone for joining us. Just a reminder, if you've got your cell phones with you tonight, if you could please silence them to not interrupt our proceedings. And welcome to the April meeting of the Citizens Law Enforcement Review Board. We will begin with roll call. Ms. Fasano, if you could call the roll, please.
Yes. Okay, Chair Pintar,
Present.
Vice Chair Ms. Keen Ayub, present. Secretary Fasano, present. Dr. Brown,
Present.
Federico Mondragon,
Present.
Mr. Mendelson,
Present.
and I don't see Mr. Ware.
Thank you. I don't believe we have anyone participating, any of our board members participating online, so we'll go past item 2 and we'll move to item 3. This is the non-agenda public comment. So if you're here to make a comment about something that is not on the agenda tonight, this is the time to do it. And you need to submit a speaker slip to Ms. Hakak, who's there. I believe you already have the speaker slip though, Nara. So if you want to go ahead and call the first speaker, we've got 2 minutes each.
Thank you, Chair Pintar. First, we will call Yusuf Miller.
Good evening. Yusuf Miller, North County Equity and Justice Coalition, Saving Lives in Custody, California. And I've been receiving a lot of complaints from about deputies who are on patrol on the streets. And it has a lot to do with engagement with the community, with just politeness, regular engagement with community, rude speech and behavior and language. These kind of things is supposed to be a professional organization, and I know there's a lot of frustration of what's going on in the community, what's going on with law enforcement lately, but they can't take those frustrations out in the community. We expect more than that. A lot of people are frustrated themselves, and it'll only escalate situations in the streets when it comes to engaging the community. So we look for more professionalism. We look for that in the body-worn cameras, that they encounter those things. That's why I'm glad that people are asking for body-worn camera videos of these kinds of interactions with the community. But I think we need to put re-emphasize the idea of community service when it comes to any stops or talks with the community. Of course, they can get out of hand a little bit, but still there's no excuse for foul language or treating those people less than the accommodations that they deserve. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we will call Jessica.
Hello, my name is Jessica Kramer. I am a disabled dependent adult that lives in the county of San Diego. I was diagnosed with a rare recurrent viral meningitis condition 21 years ago this April. And unfortunately, upon diagnosis, I didn't ever have an opportunity to really engage in medical care because I lost my ability to work and take care of myself. I became homeless and I became a victim of terrible abuse because of my vulnerabilities as a disabled person. Since then, I have experienced various forms of assault, physical, sexual, verbal, all forms of discrimination and victimization. And I rely on 911, specifically dispatch, to get the right information to officers, but then also police and fire to provide a dignified and accommodating response that allows me to have a safe outcome, which for me is usually based around getting my care team and my support team to help me recover without experiencing inappropriate 72-hour holds due to misunderstanding of my symptoms, and to allow my support and my medical team to really pick up the burden as opposed to the ambulance and emergency room system and the mental health system. Unfortunately, in this time, I have found that I don't appear to be a dependent adult to most of the community, especially law enforcement. And as a result, I have not been included in that part of the justice system. And since the Senior and Disability Justice Act was approved in 2021, there have become mandatory minimum elements from the post organization in our California legislature that recognizes the unique differences of disability abuse from other protected classes. And the legislature recognizes that my population, especially being a single woman. I'm sorry, can I just have 30 more seconds? Okay, thank you so much. So last night I experienced a potential medical emergency at a grocery store. The staff handled it poorly, unfortunately, and it resulted in my need for 911 assistance. Most of the employees ganged up on me, and there was bullying, gawking, laughing, waving while I was waiting for my caregiver to arrive. And I did engage in a request for a deputy to stand by and take a report. And I was denied that on every level. No willingness to take witness statements, look at my evidence, etc. So I appreciate your time.
Thank you. Lynn, is there a way we could advise her about how to file a formal complaint? Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we will call Bill.
Hello, I'm Bill. I'm a resident of San Diego City. First of all, I'd like to thank everyone in CLERB for their work in monitoring and investigating potential abuses and potential mistakes in law enforcement. I understand that it's a very difficult process. It can be very frustrating. It can be very sad. And I really appreciate your work. I came here to talk about case 24083. First of all, I'd like to thank Investigator Spencer for his work. I believe that he tried his best and gave it all he got to come to the conclusions. But that being said, I would just like to point out, some of the questions I have about the report. And it mainly comes from, item 4, about the fact that the deputies did not turn on their cameras during the arrest. Because of that, we don't have, video evidence about what happened. Everything that we can talk about is, circumstantial hearsay, he said, she said. And I don't think the folks at Fairbanks Ranch are very open to allowing people access to their communities. That being said, given that that happened and the CLERB identified that as a potential problem, I would like to just call into question about the other major accusation 1, about, the use of force at the protest. What it said is what the report said is that there was a protester trying to walk into the motorcade and the sheriffs came in to arrest her. Well, the problem with that saying is that, well, the sheriffs are standing on the street, and if the motorcade is entering, then it's not the protester that's in danger, it's the sheriffs that's in the danger. So I find that very hard to believe. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Next, we will call David Settles.
Hello, CLERB. I'm brother of Matthew Settles, David Settles. So I'm here. What I wanted to talk to today was, last week I heard at the CLERB, the Sheriff's Department talked about their intake process, and I think they've spoken a number of times how robust it is and effective in really screening the mentally ill or other, at the intake at the jails. This weekend, I did see the article in the Union Tribune. It just shows me, I think it's very clear that there's broken, and that's that intake is not working. I mean, there's a lot of similarities to the young man in that story, Mr. Pixler, with my brother, taken in for having a long time schizophrenic, having a psychosis, being taken to the, jail and being put Both were sent to George Bailey, where there is no psych unit. They were both assaulted. These are very vulnerable young people, in custody. Now, I understand, and I think we all understand, it's a difficult challenge for the sheriff's department to, some of these do lash out. They're physically may, have concerns there, but their safety should be there. They're all our family members. A lot of these, every case is different, but they're not real criminals, violent. They deserve treatment. And it's obviously broken. In this case, this young man in the article, it was completely broken. They misclassified him, couldn't even get his name straight. How are they going to assess the mental health needs of the patient? So, that's just what I had to say today. So I hope the CLERB would look more closely at that. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we will call Vicky.
Hi, I'm here to represent my son, Jarrell Lacey, which April 11 will be exactly 3 years he's been gone. He passed in Central Jail, and he was neglected by the nurse. And I feel that I need to bring it to the attention. The nurse, they gave him an EKG, and on his file, they denied my lawsuit. But on his file, they said that she did not check the EKG until after he passed. And she made a statement in my report I read, which it ate me up when I read this. She said she didn't feel it was anything wrong with my son, Mr. Jarrell Lacey, because he was able to get up on the bed on his own. And as he left from the nurse office, he returned into his room and he fell right out on the floor and died right then and there. And so he was neglected by the nurse, and also he was neglected by the deputy. They said that he was calling for like about 30 to 40 minutes. And in my report, I read that they said that none of the call boxes was working, which that seems very strange to me. Why was none of the call boxes working? My son had a mental problem. He was schizophrenic and bipolar. They had him in the mental area. And at the time when he passed, they put him in a regular unit with the regular people. And he had also poured water in one of the nurses' face and spit in one of the nurses' face. So I think that they had a resentment against my son, and my son passed. And I've been having nightmares for the last couple of weeks because how they handled his case, and I feel that it was wrong. So I want to bring that to you guys' attention.
Thank you. Next, I will start calling the online request to speak. First, we will call Deidre McLeod. Deidre?
Hello? My name is Deirdre McLeod, and I am a constituent of Supervisor Joel Anderson, District 2. My pronouns are she, her. Thank you for reopening the investigation into Raymond Vogelman's in-custody death. Several times recently, I've seen this board change course after public comment, including last month when a legal team pointed out possible errors and admissions in the Vogelman investigation you are about to vote on. I commend you for listening and responding. But it shouldn't take the combined weight of passionate pleas, legal arguments, and press conferences to balance the scales of justice. During the workshop where you took public comment on the executive officer search, someone spoke about how important it was for this board to remain impartial, neither taking the sheriff's side nor the community's. That comment has stuck with me because in theory it's true, but there is a massive power imbalance that CLERB decisions must navigate. By design, the sheriff's department has more influence than the people will ever have. Hours and hours are spent investigating whether to sustain or dismiss a complaint, yet advocates for the incarcerated get 2 minutes to make their case. It's no wonder that so many impacted family members and the community at large feel unheard by this system. Again, I commend you for taking the steps you've taken to date to right this power imbalance. And I ask that the board continue to be bold in its efforts to hold the sheriff's office and probation department to account. Because when family isn't able to plead, when lawyers can't be hired, and when the news doesn't cover a tragedy, whose 2 minutes that might change your decision, aren't you getting a chance to hear?
Thank you, Deidre. Next, we will call Sandy Whittle. Sandy?
I represent North County Equity and Justice Coalition on Saving Lives in Custody, California. I am the mother of Saxon Rodriguez. My 22-year-old son died in Central Jail on July 20th, 2021, almost 4 years ago. Saxon's death was the result of consistent failures by the entire Sheriff's Department to keep drugs out of the jails and to follow mandated timely cell checks. 4 years later, I'm still waiting for answers how the drugs that killed my son entered the facility undetected and then moved around the jail so easily. 4 years later, there are still many consistent failures by the Sheriff's Department that caused deaths and injuries, resulting in millions of dollars in taxpayer money. Failures that also cause grief, sorrow, and pain with preventable death of a loved one. I want to ask CLERB to be more diligent, more assertive, and more unbiased, because since Paul Parker left, CLERB looks weak and one-sided. One classifies the aggressive behavior of deputies body slamming a person to the concrete ground, causing broken teeth, justifying force so violent to cause a seizure or unconsciousness. CLERB justifying sheriff's deputies standing over a dying man, watching him bleed to death for over 12 minutes and not rendering any aid. CLERB justifying a 5-deputy on 1 inmate fault. CLERB justifying deputies consistently not turning on their body-worn cameras during incidences.
Looks like we lost her. We already lost her, so
Okay, why
Yeah.
don't you go ahead and if somehow she gets back
Yeah.
online, we can give her her remaining 20 seconds or
Yes.
30 seconds, okay?
perfect. Thank you so much. Okay, next we will call Leslie Crawford.
Excuse me. This is Leslie Crawford speaking for 22124 Raymond Vogelman. I'd like to thank you for looking again at his review, but I was going to give all my minutes to either Joseph Miller or David Settles or Weddle's family. But I guess we all have something in common, is that the Sheriff's Department doesn't really care about or really focus on the mental health problem in and out of our jails. And so I don't know if I want to give my time or just say thank you for reassessing Raymond, but it's not just about Raymond Vogelman. It's about all these young men and women. And can I give a minute to David Settles or Yusuf Miller if they would like it? And again, thank you again for reassessing Raymond's review. It may be discussed. Thank you.
Mr. Settles or Mr. Miller, would you like to take her remaining 1 minute?
Thank you, Leslie. Yusef Miller, North County Equity and Justice Coalition, Saving Lives in Custody. We're seeing a pattern inside and outside the jails as far as our a person we had up here earlier today talking about the blue envelope accommodations on the outside and with mental health on the inside. And we know that the civil rights of incarcerated people is medical and mental health on Title 15 in our state constitution. It seems that it's being violated, especially on the people who have lost their lives. But if we see it's being violated on the streets as well, there's something our antenna should go way up and say we need to double down and triple down on this aspect. This is something that a lot of our supervisors are now very interested in as far as wrapping our arms around the medical and the mental health to make sure that we have people that can survive the incarceration system and, for that matter, from our last speaker, to survive on the street.
Thank you, Chair Pintar. I can see Sandy Willow is back. Do you want me to call her and give her the 20? seconds?
Yes, let her know that she has 20 seconds remaining.
Yes. Okay, Cindy, we will call you right now. You have 20 seconds to speak.
Sorry, I'm not sure where I left off. I just wanted to say that consisting of turning their bottom cameras during incidences of violence and assault. Or you are part of the problem if you continue to justify the deputy's actions. You are condoning the sheriff's mentality of abuse, aggression, assault, and even. Please be better, clear. And lastly, I want to say, my son Saxon, may you rest in peace. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we will call Paloma Serna.
Was I in and out?
Paloma, can you hear me?
Yes, my name is Paloma Serna. I'm the mother of Elisa Serna, who was killed on November 11th, 2019 by retired Deputy Rashawn Foster, Deputy Lucas Lacey Lovisa, Deputy Tony Hall Bennett, Denali Pasquale, Carol Gilmore, Frederic Von Lente, and many others. I am with the North County Equity and Justice Coalition and Saving Lives in Custody, California. Having video footage is crucial in every in-custody death investigation. We all want to know what happens to our loved ones when they die. Hours of video footage before and after Elisa was killed show me who was responsible for her death and who needs to be held accountable. Retaining video footage after a death in custody reveal how Daniel Lee Pasquale, Lucas Lacey, Lovisa, and Tony Hall Bennett ignore Elisa as she lay dead on the cold, filthy floor of her cell. Just retaining 1 hour of footage after Elisa died showed Tony Hall Bennett walking past Elisa's cell, looking in 5 to 6 times. So yes, it is important to have video after a death. For the sheriff office to state that video footage generally has no evidence, inventory, I can't even say the word value. I say that is false. Regarding juvenile record, the sheriff office states records sealed by the court, such as juvenile records, are not available without a lawful right. What was it lawful when the sheriff attorney obtained Elisa's juvenile record so they could present them to the juror if we had gone to trial in our civil case? Was that a lawful right to make the victim look bad? I would like to know why so many cases the finding was actually justified. There's nothing that's justified being lifted into the air and slammed to the ground, like in the case of Quam Singleton. It looks like this board believes the sheriff's department is the honest party and the civilian is the dishonest one. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we will call Elka.
Hello, my name is Ilka Weston. I'm part of North County Equity and Justice Coalition. In addition to Saving Lives in Custody campaign and TAP for youth and adults and kids to kids. Thank you very much for having me here. You know, I hear everybody come back again and again and again. One of the most recent deaths was so gruesome, I am shocked it even happened. And what they all have in common, from Raymond Vogelman to Elisa Serna to the Settles family, you know, and they all have mental health in common. It is common knowledge that many people do drugs and alcohol to self-medicate. I may not have continued with my psychology degree, but God knows it's legal in Germany. I am shocked that we have to keep coming back and keep coming back. I don't think we'd have to keep coming back had Paul been hired from the beginning. We need to fight differently and we need to fight smarter. This is a wonderful board. We need to fight to remove Kelly Martinez. The only one that's actually going to be successful in getting her to remove is Tony Atkins, who is currently running for governor. We need to go on record and hold the people accountable. We would have had a great sheriff, and not the sheriff who oversaw that created the deaths under Gore, and then now had Tony not insisted on getting them elected. And I am going to call her out for what she is. That last man had a cellmate who was supposed to have nobody with him, hitting the deputy things to prove he could kill the guy before they got there. Is that how we treat mental health people? No. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we will call Sabrina Woodall.
Hello, my name is Sabrina Weddle, the older sister of Saxon Rodriguez, who died July 20th, 2021 in San Diego Central Jail. I want to start by saying the names of the deputies who were working the day that he died: Brian Powell, Andrew Randovich, Maxwell Rimple, Andre Wanzer. I also want to say the nurses' names: Melissa Burns, Reggie Barreto, Carrie Cavello, Reincarnacion, Caitlin Hendricks, Marley Nabanza, Kelly Payne, Levy Santos, and Chantel Williams. 9 nurses couldn't prevent my brother's death the day that he died. Why? Because he was already dead due to the lack of care that the sheriffs provided. 5 minutes and 28 seconds cost him his life. And here I am, another meeting, sharing with you guys for 2 minutes about how they failed to do their job. We already know they failed to do their job. They fail every time. And here is CLERB, action justified, action justified. You guys are telling the lady in the audience, oh, let's get her information. For what? You guys are just going to say action justified? That's why she couldn't make it a report, just like the deputy in the last report. Go ahead and report it. Nothing's going to happen. And it's true. Ever since Paul left, and I will continue to say it, ever since Paul left, the CLERB is weak in the knees. And it's ridiculous. We've had nurses come on here and say how jail is the best place to overdose. We've had deputies say that they won't see any, they won't be held accountable ever. Go ahead and get into one of them little green uniforms and you can kill whoever. You'll get a little bonus on top. Kelly Martinez, you suck at your job. You'll forever suck. They wanted to put you on Instagram and say, oh, she's an encouragement to the youth. No, she's killing the youth. Rest in peace, Saxon Rodriguez.
Thank you. Next, we will call Jennifer Schmidt. Jennifer, can you hear us?
Can you hear me?
We can hear you just fine.
Okay, my name is Jennifer Schmidt. I'm the daughter of Gilbert Gill. I just want to state that I got a report from CLERB from Paul Parker stating that no deputies were responsible in the death of my father. But let me read you some names here, 14 which are deputies. Myra, first it was nurse Sylvia Sucking, Myra Randa, Anna Mundos, Deputy Mason Cassidy, Deputy Miguel Baca, Deputy Christopher Adel, Deputy Lieutenant Kevin Camos, Deputy Sergeant Luis Gomez, Martin Mandrill, Pedro Maldonin, Miguel Aguilar. That's just a name. Well, let me get them all. Talamontes, Jorge Calderon, John Nugi, Sergeant Lena Quenes, Defendant Danielle Pizzone, Michael Cospio, Cameron Garcia, just to name a few. This is ridiculous. Why did they say no deputies? 3 deputies were reprimanded by Internal Affairs for my dad's case, but Paul Parker gave me a report saying no deputies were responsible. I don't know what's going on here. It's like counteracting each other. It's like, when's the truth going to finally come out? When do we really get to see what's really happening to our loved ones? When is somebody going to be held accountable? When are we going to get complete transparency? Because this is nonsense. Not only do we have to mourn our loved ones, we have to fight the county to find out what happened to our loved ones. And that's not fair. These are people to protect and serve, and they are murdering us. They are murdering our loved ones, and they are not being held accountable. And it is ridiculous. The nurses are not held accountable. If they worked in a normal facility, they would be cited by the state board. They would be in jail for manslaughter. but because they work under qualified immunity, even though you guys have no jurisdiction over them, they get away with it as well. It is nonsense. It is absolute nonsense. It's going to take Kelly Martinez's dad or somebody's of high power's dad or mom to die in your jails for somebody to do something about it. And that is ridiculous. It's costing the taxpayers money. That's why nobody cares. That's why. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair Pintar, and that concludes our request to speak for item number 3.
Bitch.
Thank you. We will go to, is anyone to approval of the minutes? Does anyone have a motion to approve the minutes from our March meeting?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Ms. Fasano, can you call the roll? Yes.
Vice Chair Dean. Aye. Secretary Fasano, yes. Dr. Brown,
Yes.
Federico Mondragon. Abstain. Mr. Mendelson.
Yes.
Mr. Ware is absent. Okay, let the record show the minutes passed by a vote of 5 yeses in favor, 1 abstention, and 1 absence.
Thank you. We will move to item number 5. There is no presentation or training tonight, so we will move to item number 6. Our Executive Officer, Mr. Kalina, want to begin with your item A, overview of activities.
All right, good evening, everyone. My name is Brett Kalina, Executive Officer of CLERB. My pronouns are he, him, his. I'm going to start today talking about tomorrow is the first day of a brand new special investigator for CLERB. We're very excited that Lori Adams will be joining us starting tomorrow morning. And so we're happy that she's going to be on board. The second SI is scheduled to start around May 4th, so 1 month away, where we'll be in, and we're also starting our search, or not starting, but our interview process for an admin secretary position is starting as well. So hopefully we can get up to speed and be fully staffed real soon. I wanted to give a quick update on the potential healthcare jurisdiction change. This week we had a meet, and next week hopefully the final confer, which is with SEIU. And it was a good exchange. They had lots of questions for me, and I felt that it went really well. I felt that we were able to fully answer all of their questions, and they're going to come back if they have anything next week. Other than that, the deadline is Monday for anybody to request. So unless something comes in tomorrow, meet and confer should be done next week. What the next process will be, I have reached out to D4 to see what their plans may be once meet and confer is over. I have not heard back yet, but I anticipate I will know more, and I obviously will fill you in if something happens between now and the board meeting in May. Right now, we've really been focusing as far as administrative side of things. You'll hear a little bit about the study, the in-custody death study later, but we're also in the middle of budget season. And so we've been dealing with a lot of budget issues to get ready for 25, 26 and beyond. The county is looking at some pretty major cuts across the board. We look pretty good compared to most departments. So yeah, we're not done. But I'm hoping that we can survive that without too much cuts. As we'll hear a little bit later, but I just want to know that the CPR request or case deadline for them to respond was March 28th. We are now CPRA. This was all of the requests by the company hired to do the study. And that passed last week, the time frame. And so now we are moving to that next phase. We're going to talk a little bit about the budget today, but I am hopeful that we can get the board a draft first study soon.
I'm sorry if I missed you saying this in the beginning of your remarks, but you are referring to the death study, and we're going to talk about the budget for that later, correct?
Talk about the budget
Okay.
later. Yep. I just was talking a little bit about the procedure so we don't intermix the two because the budget's been completely different. But we're done now with the process of collecting the data, and now we're at the point where the report is being written. I want to talk about a couple of bills. One is a Senate bill that is the blue enveloped proposed legislation. That legislation is going to be from my research and reading of it, this is going to be through the Department of Motor Vehicles where individuals can apply like they do for a license or an identification to get a blue envelope, which would then give them the ability to provide that to any number of service providers throughout the state. So that can be at a hospital, that can be to law enforcement, that can be to many different areas. I believe that we will be in support. I just want to get some more information to provide to the board so that we can come together and discuss what a combined response would be for that one. And I think we have a little bit of time on that. I do know that the Sheriff's Department started Blue Envelope well before this Senate bill. So I believe there's quite a bit of support from the sheriff on that as well. So I expect that to go over well. The second one, which we just recently heard about, was Assembly Bill 847. And this was proposed by a local assemblywoman, Dr. Lachey Sharp Collins, from the La Mesa area. She is proposing this assembly bill, which would extend existing confidential access to peace officer personnel files, which currently exist for grand juries, DAs, the Attorney General in California, Post. They get access to those personnel files. This bill would extend that to civilian oversight, which would then give us access to the personnel files of the deputies that come in front of us for investigation. And probation
I was just
officers.
going to ask, would this help us with the challenge we've been having with getting records from the probation department? Do you
Well,
think? Maybe you don't have the answer yet, but that would be helpful.
It's going to be an interesting process. Everything with probation, juvenile probation, has been a completely different process than what we do with the Sheriff's Department. There are many more protections for juveniles, and that we'll talk more about that today as we have to dismiss a few cases for that reason. It may provide us the opportunity to look at the use of force records if the internal affairs of probation reviewed it to determine whether or not it was excessive or not. I believe whatever they used in their determination would then become available to us potentially. So I think that could be a real breakthrough for us in getting access. We haven't gotten anywhere with our exemption for 827, but we're working on that as well.
What is 827? I'm sorry.
827 is the California statute which allows for the confidentiality of juvenile probation cases. And there are very limited exemptions that are given in its WIC 827, and we are not one of those exemptions, which I am proposing to multiple legislators that they maybe propose such a bill that would give us that exemption.
What, can I ask one more question, this gentleman?
You may.
Could you please explain blue envelope a little bit more so people know what that is?
Yeah, I certainly don't pretend to be an expert in blue envelope, but what it would allow under the Americans with Disabilities Act is that anybody that has something diagnosed and is a recognized disability within the Americans with Disability Act would be able to apply to the DMV under this law, which would then be the ability for them when they encounter anybody, whether it's, again, law enforcement, PERT, when they do the counts, for the homeless people, like they would be able to present this blue envelope so that they understand what issues that individual has, and so that they understand what those disabilities are. It can obviously a very wide range, and it would give the individuals that come into contact with these people a better understanding of their situation.
Law enforcement, you mean law enforcement?
Law enforcement as well. Obviously, it's very important with law enforcement because without knowing what's in the blue envelope, what disabilities that they might have, that's when some interactions could go wrong.
Thank you.
Thank you. And just to clarify, Mr. Klein is bringing up these two pieces of legislation because we've been approached by either legislators or other advocates asking for us to look at this legislation and see if it's something that we could support. So we will be asking him to go back. We just received these pretty recently, so we didn't have a time to put them on the agenda to take an action this month. So he will do that over the course of the next few weeks and probably send something to all of us individually this month. And then we'll talk about how we can move forward with an action. We are unclear right now what the timing is. So if the Assembly Member Sharp Collins needs a letter of support from us sooner, we'll talk about what that might look like, whether it's a letter from us as individuals, as members of CLERB, if it's from me as the chair, whether she needs that before next month, we'll keep everybody informed in the coming weeks. Sorry if I jumped in there. I just thought it would be clarifying for everybody.
So let's talk about juvenile probation. So we just brought this up. I know there has been a lot of questions about the process of how is it that almost 6 months to the day, we received a list of cases from probation which talked about use of force resulting in injuries. That's all they provided to us. And since that time, we have taken steps. So I just want to talk a little bit about some of the history so that you all understand that, and then where we are at now. So I'm going to go step by step. If you have questions, please feel free to jump in. There has been significant amount of time, effort, counsel to get to this point, and we still have not seen a single page. So I just want you to understand that as we move forward. In the past, and some of you may have been on the board when this was still going on, there was a memorandum of understanding between probation and CLERB that they would provide some of these records to us as part of our cooperation clause. At some point in time, WIC 827 came to the attention of county council, at which that time that memorandum of understanding or agreement went away. And it was at that point in time they stopped all process of providing us with information on juvenile cases and said that we would have to then go forward with this petition process to request the records.
To jump in and ask you to clarify things for everybody's benefit. Who or what is WIC 27?
WIC 27 is the California state statute which maintains confidentiality for juvenile cases. Any juvenile cases that involve the law enforcement or probation. So if they are in detention or they're working with them outside of detention, all of those records have to remain confidential with limited exemptions unless you petition the court where those exist and prove why you would need those records, and then a juvenile judge would then review that petition and any objections from the DA's side or probation counsel, and then make a determination of what records would be available for CLERB in our case. Yep. Yeah.
Excuse me.
Yes.
When you say WIC, are you referring to the Welfare and Institutions Code? Okay.
Yes.
I just to let everybody know.
Thank you, Jim.
So when we received that list of the 28 use of force cases, we immediately started the process of now what do we do? How do we file these petitions? What needs to happen? At that point in time, council sat down with a judge of the juvenile court, with county counsel there for probation. I got to attend, and at that point in time, it was decided how we would go about the process of probation telling us enough information on these 28 cases, because they certainly didn't provide it in the first go round, what they had to provide so that we were able to file the proper petition. That took time. And then they took their time in responding with that information that we needed, which included the case numbers. That's really all we needed to be able to file these petitions, and it took some time. So then we went through the process of preparing these petitions and filing them. They were originally filed with the court and mailed to county council and the other parties involved on March 5th. They usually would have 10 days to respond, which would mean objections. Now county council is telling us that they didn't get service proper and they wanted to extend the amount of time that they had to respond. Meanwhile, they filed objections anyway to all of those petitions, even though claiming that they didn't know anything about it and couldn't do it. So now we are in this process by which we've requested the records. County council for probation has objected basically to every single thing we asked for in a very general, broad way, which they have the right to do. And then we will go back, respond to that objection, and then they will set a date by which the juvenile judge who will be assigned to review these cases will then review them for that determination. Yep.
Just, thank you. Just very quickly, just to make sure that the legal record is clear, because our friends may be listening tonight, and I want to just make sure. So it wasn't that the probation department and county council and CLERB had a memorandum of agreement. It was actually a standing order that had been signed off by the presiding juvenile court judge, and it had been in effect for many, many years. It was in effect when I arrived and many, many years prior to that. So in or about February of last year, 2024, we started filing some juvenile cases, and we were then told that that standing order was no longer good and we would need to comply with the Welfare and Institution Code Section 827 petition process for every case. It's not a matter of we get a group of cases and we can file a group petition for the same records but for different juveniles. We need to do a singular separate one for each case that we get. So we did go to the court and we did come up with this process, and it is taking a long time. But I did want to say that it was a standing order beforehand, and it wasn't for several months until we were able to understand what the objections from the probation council were. And with respect to the service, there's no dispute that CLERB complied with service by process of mail, and I'm looking at Mr. Mendelson because he's familiar with serving documents and pleadings by mail. However, there is a specific provision in Welfare and Institutions Code Section 827 that gives the objecting parties the ability to object within 10 days of receipt. So the latest argument is that they don't know when that 10-day period starts because they didn't physically receive the hard copies. But they were able to still file objections, and we are working on a stipulation to move these forward, and we may require some judicial assistance in that regard.
I think that's a lead, and I was going to ask you, what's the position of the current standing court presiding judge?
The current judge, so we've had conversations with both Judge Espana, who is the presiding juvenile judge, and then there's a separate judge, Judge Monroy, who is the 827 desk judge. So when the petitions are filed, they normally go through one judge that is pretty much all he does is look at petitions, weigh objections, determine whether further briefing or hearings are necessary, and kind of manages that. So if we have to come up with some further work on what receipt means, and I understand just from an email I got today that there is a kind of a distinction between service for purposes of serving the petitions and receipt for objection purposes. And apparently that is kind of a snafu in the rules of court versus juvenile law. So those are things that are being worked on, and we're trying to get through those as quickly as possible. But to Brett's point, the county council for the probation department have filed numerous objections to the petitions for everything that has been requested. We did provide them with a checklist, which CLERB has used for juvenile records forever, many, many months ago. So they knew what we would always be asking for. CLERB is in the distinct disadvantage because CLERB has no information about any of these cases except for it's a juvenile, there's a case number, there's a date when something happened, and with these cases, they are supposed to be great bodily injury. So they did provide CLERB with with a description of what the injury was. And that is all the information that CLERB got. So we're kind of at a disadvantage because we don't even have enough facts to better articulate the types of documents that we will need. So it is a long process. We are working very diligently. CLERB has special counsel litigators that are helping us in this matter. It was more than one attorney could do. So we are working as diligently as we can, and we will continue to update not only the community and the board, but all of the interested stakeholders in this matter as we move forward. The last thing I will say, and not to take your place, Brett, but one of the biggest other obstacles we've had is that because the cases did not come from probation until 2 to sometimes 3 years after the GBI occurred, the incident giving rise to CLERB's ability to investigate, that many of the cases have been sealed under juvenile law. And juvenile law is pretty expansive on what happens when a case gets sealed. It can automatically happen when a juvenile turns 18, becomes an adult, because that's the whole spirit of juvenile law, is to allow juveniles that have been rehabilitated under juvenile law to go ahead into the world as an adult with a clean record, to enable them to get jobs, pursue, advanced education, that types of things. So the sealing requirements are very strict, and it is very difficult for anyone to get records that have been sealed to be reopened. So that is where we are.
Thank you. Did you have anything else, Brett?
Yes. So I just wanted to thank you for clearing most of that up. What happened additionally, besides the 6 that probation turned over, we did have a case where there was a complaint that came in on a juvenile case recently, and in the process of doing this same thing, that was also sealed. So we will be coming with another case in front of everyone today or next month potentially to do that. One of our issues is that because they don't provide us with all the information, it's difficult for us to even look up whether these cases have actually been sealed or not on our own without having the information. It's just one more thing to make us go through another hoop just to find out that the delay then ends up in more cases being sealed and less cases to bring in front of you all. And I know you've heard me say this before, but we still don't have 2024 cases. So we have a whole nother list that will be coming to us at some point, hopefully soon, so that we can start this petition process again for 2024. Hopefully that helps clear up a lot of them, but this is a drop in the bucket of the background that's going on for all the work to get these petitions filed.
Thank you both. I know that was a lot, but I thought it was very important for, I don't think the CLERB board has fully had a chance to hear about the amount of work they've put into trying to get these records so we can investigate what these use of force, great bodily injury cases are about, who caused them, who was harmed, if any corrections need to be made. So they've been spending a lot of time, and I thought it was important, not just for the board, but for the public to hear that this is what we've been up against in this for several months. So thank you. Yes, please. That was what my next, if anyone had any questions, I'm sorry, Adele.
Sorry, I jumped the gun.
My fault. Go ahead.
Okay, my question is there a timeline that CLERB has to make an assessment or make a finding or whatever we call the action we take
Yeah, so
on these juvenile cases?
yeah, so we would not be running our time frame until we receive the records to start our investigation. So we have not started that timeline yet. And so we would toll that period until we've received enough information. I guarantee you we'll be back discussing this again when we get the first set of redacted records from the other side, and we will not be happy with what we get as far as the redacted records. So this is going to be a long ongoing process.
Follow-up question?
Yes, go ahead. And then I have one, but go ahead, Adele.
We have several cases on our agenda tonight, and we never received the records yet. We're being asked to take action on them. Can you explain
Yes,
that?
yes, because those 6 cases that you are seeing later tonight, and we'll be discussing them individually later, so I don't want to discuss any individual parts. The cases have been sealed. We've received that information from counsel, not from an independent party, and so there is no method to go back to the state. CLERB has no jurisdiction whatsoever to have the file unsealed for purposes of going back to review the use of force reports in this case. The only option potentially would be this new bill, which would maybe allow us, but I doubt it's going to be able to go back and get some of these records. It's really difficult. And so each time these cases get sealed, we will be in front of you asking to basically dismiss that case.
I know, frustrating. I understand. I don't know that there would be ever an opportunity. I mean, there's not really an option, a way to have anything unsealed. Once they're sealed, they're sealed. Is that correct?
That is our understanding of the law as it presently stands, because there has been actually more ways to seal documents, and it's my understanding that case files have even been sealed afterwards. There was a juvenile who died in a detention facility, a minor's detention facility, and they could not get records after that case was sealed for purposes of a wrongful death case.
Any other questions from the board? Nadia and then Ariana.
So the probation department now oversees youth all the way up to age 24. Are they retaining them and sealing the cases while they are still in there? Or are we able to get information on those?
No, if they're still within the system, so in some cases, the probation will maintain jurisdiction over that individual up to age 24, like you said. But as long as their case is open, it's not going to be sealed because it has to be continually reviewed by the court and by the DAs or anybody else that may be involved in the case, and with the final conclusion of releasing them from juvenile probation. And so it wouldn't be sealed at that point in time, even though they've reached a certain age. However, the sealing laws now can be at times automatic, which means it doesn't mean that the juvenile applies to have it sealed, or the court applies to have it sealed, or the DA applies to have it sealed. It may happen based upon hitting an age or a time frame after the case has been closed, if that helps.
And then after your follow-up, then Ariana.
So if they have a case like this and they are 22 still in the system, are they just holding it until they're 24 or until they're released?
It depends because there's a list of factors that go into play for sealing. The main thing is the case has to be closed. I would assume that it may go faster for people over the age of 18 than those under the age of 18, because the point of it is to allow them to quickly get back out into society, that they don't have these show up on a job interview or a school application. They want them to have that fresh start. And so it may happen sooner, but I certainly couldn't sit here today and tell you the ins and outs of every way that those cases get sealed.
Ms. Federico Mondragon.
I actually forgot my question. But I think that I forgot it because I'm still processing this whole process that you have to go through. And it's really upsetting to me that there is even a process that is exhausting. I can only imagine for the young people, for their parents, and what happens. I think any sort of violence that happens in your life is very traumatic. And, during those years that they are in detention for whatever reason that they're in for, you know, it, it's not fair for them to live through it and not have some sort of process to fight their case. So I do appreciate that, the transparency, but I'm just wondering what other things can be done, because I don't know if it's like a trend of the GBI use, and I just don't know. But I do invite the audience, to share, and just maybe we can understand what other counties or states are doing. Um, and I mean, this is California too, so I just wanted to share that there is frustrations that I'm currently feeling.
And if you don't mind, I'll
Yeah.
address a couple of those. So one is there is a state that is working on granting this exception for civilian oversight to 827, which is what alerted me to start pushing for that additional exemption in California. And so again, that would be a major change in the entire game because that would give us access immediately. They wouldn't have to wait for us to file a petition. They would have to turn those records over. We might still have a fight about redaction and all those other types of things, but those are things we can work through because we still get access to the case. And so I cannot tell you the frustration on our end as well. We want to get these records. It's just been too long of a process for us because we're used to getting these cases and start working on them as soon as we can. And here we are sitting on them, 4 years after some of the events. And let me tell you the other issue that we're going to come across, and I'm going to be in front of you soon saying we've gotten the records. Maybe we're all excited. And while we're investigating, the case gets sealed. Then what? And we're already dealing with this in one of the cases that this board has decided. And in that case, the case has now been sealed after you've made your decision, which is actually going to be very difficult for the individuals who we sustained as a board against, because now they have no access to those records to have their defense be heard. It is a very complex situation. I expect in that case, we may actually be in a process of litigation to determine the ability of them to even have their defense on this in civil service. So there's a lot of things yet to come, and I just want to prepare you all that this frustration that you feel right now will continue for some time, and it's not going to be an easy process.
Ask a question, please.
Yes, Mr. Brown.
Which state is working to unseal?
New York.
How long have they been?
So Hey, it's been about 6 months that I saw the first proposal of the bill. I have not seen a change yet. I've tried to continue to reach out to my colleagues in New York who are following this closely for the same reasons that we are, but nothing has been put forward for a vote yet that I'm aware of.
To speak to your frustration, though, the assembly bill that he spoke of earlier, he's going to take a look this month and see if that's something that could be helpful to us, and it might help us to be supportive when the time comes. Okay.
I have one last thing.
Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. Please
I
go.
don't want to leave without giving a very fond farewell to our sheriff's liaison, Dave Perkins. He has got a new assignment, and this will be his last meeting with us. And so we're very excited for his new adventures and new locations. But Dave has served as a CLERB liaison for a very long time, probably one of the longer standing ones. Lynn, what do we say? 4, 5? 5 years. 5 years as a liaison. And I will tell you that when we have been in short timeframes, short deadlines to try to get the information to you all at last minute and those types of things, Dave and his guys have stepped up and tried to help us in those situations. It has not been a stall. It hasn't been an opportunity to do that. They have tried to get us the information that we need. And so I greatly appreciate that. Dave and I, we've probably, like all of you, have not seen eye to eye on every single thing that the sheriff's office does. And we will voice that between ourselves, but it's always been a respectful relationship. And for that, I'm very appreciative as the new guy coming in and having to learn all this process and have to understand a whole new agency and how they work and how they do their business. And such a large agency, and he's really helped me to understand as much as can and get me the training materials or the things that I've needed. And so I just am very appreciative of Dave, and I know he'll get a chance to get up there at that podium one more time, so you all can let him have it one last time. But I just wanted to get that out today.
Thank you. And I'm hoping he's going to introduce us to our new liaison later today. Yes, tonight. Thank you. Brett, do you have anything else as part of your EO report, item number 6? Okay, thank you. We will go to item number 7, Chair's report. So I wanted to use my time today to propose something to the full board. I'd like to propose an in-depth public training for this board. We'd use this time to review the board rules and regulations, discuss how the Brown Act applies to us, how it governs our meetings, our closed session deliberations, and our communication with one another. I'd like us to review guidelines for working with county staff, such as the reporting structure between us and our executive officer who works for us, and the investigators and the other CLERB staff that work for him. We've also tried for months to find a time for our lead investigator, Lynn Seltzer, to present here at the open session how our investigators conduct their work, the reports and evidence they consider, and how they arrive at their findings. And we haven't had time for that, but I'd like for that to happen. And that's why I'm also proposing that this be a public training. So like I said, I'd like it to happen in public, like a special meeting, for example, because I think the community would also like to hear about how all these rules are applied. And I think it would offer some insight and clarity about why we reach our conclusions, which typically happens in closed session. So we'll be hearing some more about that. I know Mr. Kalina and our Chief Deputy, Ms. Hakak, have been working to schedule a public town hall. I know many of the people who regularly participate in our meetings have asked for this. The whole agenda would be to hear from you. At our monthly meetings, like tonight's meeting, we have to limit public comment because we as a CLERB board have a whole other meeting after this open session is done. And I believe it's to everyone's benefit that we have the time we need to ask questions and fully deliberate in our closed sessions. Finally, there was a comment made in public comment earlier today about CLERB board being persuaded in our deliberations by legal, by attorneys who come and speak during our public sessions, and I want to say something about that. First and foremost, I am very, very grateful that there are attorneys who can ably represent families seeking answers about their loved ones. Attorneys, families, the public is always welcome to come and be heard during our public meetings. I'm also grateful to the journalists who've been very instrumental in San Diego County raising awareness of the problems that need to be fixed. However, when the letters from attorneys are delivered to the CLERB staff or the board on the day of or the day before we enter deliberations on a particular case, we cannot consider them as part of our deliberations. We as the CLERB board, receive the investigative reports for our cases a week or two before our meetings so we can prepare. And our investigators start looking at these cases, gathering the evidence, discovering the facts several months before they prepare the reports. So, of course, attorneys have a critical role as advocates for the people they represent, but we're an independent investigative body. So the arguments made in a legal letter the letters that are provided to the press, those arguments must be independently verified by our investigators before we can consider them when we make case findings. The thing that has been offered, and I know Mr. Kleina offered this to some of the attorneys last month, is that attorneys' families can file cases as a complaint to CLERB. So typically, if there is, for example, great bodily injury or a death case, if someone has died in custody, those cases come to us automatically. So the families don't have to file a complaint. But if they do, or if their attorneys file those complaints on their behalf, then the attorneys can give us or our investigators the information, and then they can independently verify that information as part of the case reports that we receive. And it could be very helpful information, but we have to have it independently verified before we can consider it during our closed session deliberations. I know that Mr. Kalina has already spoken with some of the attorneys about this. Sometimes, these letters are given to the journalists, and journalists then ask us, did you consider X or Y as part of your deliberations? And the answer is no, because we need to have that information far enough in advance that our investigators can independently verify it and then include it in the reports that we review. I hope that was helpful, because I just feel like a lot of questions were raised last month. I know there was a press event prior to the open session, and I want to make sure that everyone knows that we are trying to find a way that we can take that information in and use it in a way that's we can review it during our closed sessions. So that is my report tonight.
Chair, may I make one quick legal comment?
Please.
Thank you. And in that regard, the rules and regulations specify that for death cases where no complaint is required, the investigation still must be completed within 1 year. And so there's also a kind of an extra deadline. Now, complaints, so if the CLERB was going to investigate an in-custody death, because that comes automatically, and a family or an attorney wished to file a complaint in addition to that, they would need to do that also within a year. And then that way, everything can be received by the CLERB investigators with due time for them to investigate it separately. So there are ways to do that, but there are timelines, and those need to be complied with so that CLERB does not lose jurisdiction. So that would just be my legal comment in that regard.
Thank you. I also just wanted to ask, is it in fact possible that we have a training, as I've suggested or proposed, as a special meeting so the public could participate or listen? Or
yes, you cannot take action on voting to do that, but you are definitely the board can be polled offline, and a special meeting would be set that can be open to the public with an agenda duly promulgated, and everyone can get together.
Okay, thank you. Yes, sir. Dr. Brown, can you turn on your mic so the people online can hear you? Thank you.
Can we get I don't know if this is the right time to propose it, but can we get a look at, I have someone to come and talk to us about de-escalation in the sheriff's department, you know, the de-escalation training and what happens if a deputy is perceived to have violated that. You know, I was just talking about Mr. Yusuf Miller, and I was talking about how the deputies seem to be getting a little, you know, riled up and everything. And then again, I'm hearing information out there about compassionate fatigue and everything and the wellness. I'd like to take a look at or have someone to come and talk to us about de-escalation. De-escalation.
Okay, so I think that our liaisons heard you, but that would be something that you could definitely ask during the sheriff's liaison report.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. We will move to new business. Mr. Klein, I think you wanted to talk to us about the data study budget.
Yes, we agendized this today for one particular purpose, which was that when this board originally asked to have this study completed, there was an agreement by the board to request those funds in order to complete this study. We are now at the point in time of which that has been going on for 18 months since that was requested. And the again, as I said before, the deadline for them to respond to the CPRAs has gone. They have responded. We are now working with our contracted company, and due to some of the delays and the long process that it took to get records from the sheriff's department, it did cost additional monies. It costed money for CLERB as well, for the additional counsel that we had to provide. And so we believe that they're very close and ready to start producing a good draft report to us. But part of that process was us getting the funding for some additional costs that it was for them to get to this point. And so you all received this. It was an attachment to the agenda for today. And so we're asking the contract to go up, and I'm going to get the exact number right. $89,868 to increase the budget. We have the funds available to do so, but we thought since the board was the group that asked for this project that we would come back and ask for you all to have us move around our funds so that we can get this contract paid.
So I have a clear question to clarify. In the memo you sent us, you said it would be 89,000 and change expended from CLERB's operating budget.
Yes.
So it's coming from our current operating budget. We don't have to go to FG3 and ask for additional money. We have it, and we could expend it if we choose to do that.
Yeah, I'll let Norris.
Okay, thank you. That's what I was unclear of when I read the memo.
Yeah, thank you so much. So I've been working actually with FG3 Finance Department to see how much we have savings in our operation budget. But of course, we will need some additional budget that we will request from FG3 to see if they can provide us to tally to the 89,868 to increase the budget. I hope that answers your question. So we have some of the savings, but of course we need additional money to make up for the full amount.
So we do have to ask them for additional money for operating budget in order to cover this.
It's not so the additional amount is going to be a one-time fund, exactly how we requested them at the beginning when the board approved to move forward with the second phase of the study. It was a one-time fund. It's not reflected in our operational budget, but it's a budget being given from FG3 from their own budget to CLERB.
Okay. Any questions from the CLERB board members about what this is? Go ahead, Ms. Fasano.
I just want to understand what CLERB's role is in managing this contract. Do we approve the dollar amount, or is that something the executive director has responsibility for and can move money around within your budget.
Yes, so we do have the authority to do that. But because the original request came from the board, we wanted to make sure you understood where we were at with the contracting company and the fact why we are coming to let you know about all the delays, all the problems that we had, that they have come back and requested this additional information. They have been asked to document all of that. It's not as if we are just saying, oh, you said it's cost this much more, we're going to give you this more. We have asked them for the quantities, the times, all of the things that they have done to get to this amount. So they have backed that up, and they have not been paid this money yet. In full.
Can you clarify what we're asking for additional money for CLERB to cover this contract?
Yeah, so we will have it from a couple different funds. One will be CLERB's own operating budget savings that we've had. For example, we have been short special investigators for a considerable amount of time. That money then kind of goes into our savings, and we take a portion of that and then put that towards this. And then we will also ask FG3. There is a separate budget item for them, which is on the contract side of things. So it's not coming out of an operational budget for them. It's coming out of a contracting budget. And so we're not taking it away from someone else for like hiring or anything like that. It's part of the contract budget, if that helps.
Could you tell us what FG3 is?
Yeah, sorry. The Finance and General Government Group. Yeah. And so they are the entity within the county. Although we are an independent agencies and we do not necessarily report to FG3, FG3 handles all of our HR and our budget issues. And so they work with us to handle that side of our process so that we do not have to do that independently, if that helps.
And CLERB was placed within the Finance and General Government group, so we would be independent from the public safety arm. So that makes us more independent, if that helps and makes sense. I don't believe that Mr. Mendelson or Ms. Fasano were here when we had the prior discussion about the death study. It's been more than a year when CLERB approved a study because we had done it, there was a state audit that showed the number of deaths, how we compared to other counties. We were hoping to get additional data from the sheriff's department to find out not just the numbers, but why. Was there something systemic that we should be able to learn from this data? It's been a long, protracted effort to try and get all of the information. The sheriff responded to our request for the information in a memo that is in your packets in advance of tonight, detailing the amount of information that was requested. It actually was quite a bit. I don't think I had seen how much had been requested until she laid it out in her memo. It was helpful to know. So this additional money would take the data that we did receive, it's quite a bit, several thousand pages of data, and use that to come up with a report to us based on what they have now. I hope that helps. Okay, thank you. Where am I?
The request would be to authorize me to
Okay.
go back and work to get that money for the increase.
So is there a motion to authorize Mr. Kalina to request the additional funds so we can complete the study? Dr. Brown has made the motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Second for Mr. Mendelson. Ms. Fasano, can you call the roll?
Chair Pintar,
Yes.
Vice Chair Key,
Yes.
Secretary Fasano, yes. Dr. Brown,
Yes.
Ms. Federico Mondragon,
Yes.
Mr. Mendelson.
Yes.
Okay. Let the record show that the motion's been approved. 5 in favor.
Thank you. Really quick, Is there? Sorry, I'm looking at two different agendas, so.
There should have been public comment before we probably voted.
Sorry. Okay, so just, it's not in the script.
No.
Okay. My mistake. We should have taken public comment on this item before we voted. I apologize. I was not looking at an agenda that had that on there. So if there are members of the public that would like to comment on it now, can we take the vote again after we hear public comment? I think that would
Yes.
be the best
Yes,
way to
Chair.
proceed. Okay. I apologize.
I also apologize.
Thank you. So for this agenda item, we will call Yusuf Miller.
Thank you. Good evening. Yusef Miller, North County Equity and Justice Coalition, Saving Lives in Custody, California. And for all the monies, no matter what it costs, please vote yes, yes, yes. Because since 2021, when the audit first hit the streets, we've been asking and looking for more information, more data. And data is the foundation on how we pivot and posture ourselves on this in-custody death issue to make sure that we prevent what's coming forward, later, and to deal with what we have already had to deal with. So data is key, and we're not going to be done as we support that AB bill by Assemblymember Sharp. I think we're going to have to do this all over again because we have with our probation, it is just incredible. It is exhausting how much we cannot get from probation when it comes to our most valuable people in this system. And we're behind the ball so far on dealing with our probation. So not only do we need the data and the statistics from the adult and these detention centers, but also with our probation, we're going to need to do it over again. And we should hopefully be expert by this time on how to get it done, how to summarize what's going on in these institutions. This bill coming up is majorly important, and it takes all of our support, even the community's support, because I also hear out on the streets how people are being neglected and harmed in the juvenile detention center, which every adult is appalled by hearing. So please vote yes 100 times on getting the monies to fund this data, to continue with this data and formulate it into something that we can use. Thank you.
Thank you. We have multiple requests online. So first I will call Ilka. Ilka, can you hear us?
Yes, I can. Yes, I want to go ditto with Yusuf on what he represents and another organization which is going to be focused on detention with Yusuf, which is TAP, Transparency and Accountability for Parole and Probation for Youth and Adults, or Adults and Youth, meaning detention centers. I think we have to look at this from a whole new perspective. I'm disgusted that young adults are jailed. There are so many reports that are on PubMed. PubMed is the national database for actual abstracts. So we do not have to start at the beginning. They say, and this kills me to understand, that 40% youth that attempt to commit suicide in the first 3 days succeed. 72% succeed after 3 months. 15% to 25% of youth don't talk about it. Because why are they going to talk about it with people that do not care about them? And I am begging of the board to stop calling these people peace officers. I personally have been attacked by sheriffs twice. They think they could say whatever they want. They're sheriff's deputies. Stop calling them peace officers, and then maybe we'll trust your investigation. Not the board. I love the board. They are not peace officers. They don't care about people. They don't care about half of the nation is going to be diagnosed with a mental health disorder. Those are the people dying in jails. The Vogelman's family, the Pittmans, the Pitts family, the Weddle family, the Settles family.
enough is enough. We are not giving respect to the sheriff because she deserves none. And you need to start representing the people and stop calling them peace officers, because that I almost.
Thank you, Ilka. Your time is up. Next, I will call Leslie Crawford.
Yes. I'm speaking about this is Leslie Crawford. Thank goodness my son has been cremated, because after listening to your comments recently in the last few minutes, I'm glad he's no longer bleeding. Excuses. My lawyers, some people can't afford lawyers, okay? Even the retainer for their expenses. You posted something and it was not right, and I applaud you for maybe looking at it again, but the problem still exists. And this, I think you need to look into finding a very economical, efficient administrative assistant, because this is no wonder we have a place where people saying that there's waste in government. This is not efficiency. And this is a sheriff's department who obviously does not care and will not change. But this is an invasive problem. And I wasn't going to speak, but it made me so angry listening to the excuses that I heard. This is not okay. You need to find a better way. I'm not Yusuf Miller. I am not a diplomatic person. I am a mother who is as angry for not just my son, but for all the sons and daughters I see still being affected by this total abuse by the sheriff's department. She is an egomaniac woman who's been there forever, and she might as well be a guy, because that's the way she thinks. I thank you for your time, and I hope you have a good evening. And I didn't mean to get angry, but I just couldn't believe any of the arguments that you just talked about. Bless your hearts.
Thank you. Next, we will call Paloma Serna.
My name is Paloma Serna, the mother of Elisa Serna, who died November 11, 2019. I'm with Saving Lives in Custody of California and North County Equity and Justice Coalition. Increasing the data study budget is very crucial, not only for your investigation into identifying patterns and practices within the sheriff's and probation department, but also for raising public awareness about what is happening to our loved ones, both adults and juveniles. Kelly Martinez always has an excuse for why she cannot provide the requested information. The Mountain Whisper Light needs to complete their study in a timely manner. The delay in concluding the study falls squarely on Kelly Martinez's shoulder. Let the sheriff continue to turn in the documents that are being requested. What is probation hiding? Sealing juvenile records is not really protecting the minor. It hides the abuse that is being inflicted on the minor. I attended a LA probation civilian oversight this morning, and the spokesperson for probation, she screwed up. So they were recommending, the board was recommending things and was requesting answers, and she could not give them any answer. But she did, the only thing that she did know was, and this is what she stated, he is a chief. He could do what he wants. And the board chewed her out for making that statement. What a shame. And that is true. Probation and sheriff, they think they could do what they want. Well, screw them. We're going to be here fighting until someone is in jail for these deaths and for these abuse that are happening in the juvenile hall or in probation care. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we will call Michael. Michael, can you unmute yourself?
Hello?
Yes, we can hear you now.
Hello? 2019. She died there because of neglect. She died there because there is a systemic failure from top to bottom, whether it be the probation department or it be the juvenile halls, the probation department. It's time and time again, the systemic failure we all be is how nobody is being held accountable. You could throw all you want, but or to county jails or the sick and infirm in the kills or wherever it may be, until you start holding these county workers accountable or sheriffs that in court that they so desperately grasp onto, do not want to release over and over again.
Michael?
Hello.
Michael, yes?
Hello, can you hear me? I'm sorry, but I just
Yeah, it looks
am
like
just so
your
fed up
reception is
with all of
not.
this that's continually.
Yeah, unfortunately, it looks like the reception is not really good. You're cutting out.
Are there any others that want to speak online? Naris?
No more requests to speak online. However, we have one comment to be read for the public submitted by Tom Packard. If you allow me to read. Please keep pushing and don't accept the sheriff as resisting provision of needed data for the death evaluation. If she were interested in accountability and quality improvement, she would already have most of that information in the database. Not having information on activities implemented to prevent or reduce the number of in-custody deaths is particularly disturbing, showing her lack of interest. And that's the end of the comment.
So there are no other commenters?
Correct.
Okay.
That concludes the public comment for this item.
I apologize for my mistake. If I could have another motion to approve the additional funds needed for the death study?
I move that we authorize Executive Officer Kalina to request an additional $89,868 to fund
Thank you.
the study.
Thank you. Mr. Mendelson, is there a second? Dr. Brown's a second. Ms. Fasano, can you please call the roll again?
Okay, Chair Pintar,
Yes.
Vice Chair Keen,
Yes.
Secretary Fasano, yes. Dr. Brown,
Yes.
Federico Mondragon,
Yes.
Mr. Mendelson.
Yes.
Okay, motion passes 5 yeses.
6.
Yes.
Oh, you're right. Can't add.
Thank you. We'll now move to item 9, unfinished business. The first item is regarding the Sheriff's Office response to our policy recommendations, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of them. Mr. Klein, if you could briefly summarize the responses, or at least what they were in response to, and then if the board has any questions.
Yes, there was 5 different policy recommendations that date back to cases that originated in 2021 and 2022. Mostly one of them, which obviously is a topic of discussion, was allowing JPMU to review juvenile records that had been sealed, and now you all know why they cannot do that. And how, so, so they responded into why they could not do that. And now, again, hopefully you all know why. The the big interesting one, I guess, for us is how we're going to change our approach is the retention of the video at the facilities. We have a standing request that we do with them. We will modify that to make sure that we request the maximum amount of video that is available and saved for each one of those incidents. So we've already changed our forms to make those requests.
I'm sorry, is that a standing request, or do we have to still request them after each time we get a case to
Yeah.
review the incident?
That'll be on our form. So when we get a new case, so that's an in custody death case, it'll automatically be on our subpoena form that goes out, that's signed by me to request all the records in that case. And then that is done once we get notice. So they're already preparing generally some of those records, even though we don't get the full records for some time if there's issues like litigation or criminal charges that may be going on in those cases.
Thank you.
Yep. There was a request by this board back from a 22 case about making sure that individuals in plain clothes may be tasked with wearing body-worn camera. There's obviously reasons why deputies or probation officers wearing plain clothes should not be wearing body-worn camera, as they are generally in an undercover position or maybe doing security for somebody that they're escorting. And so there was a long request back from this board, and they have explained why they cannot do that in those circumstances. And again, many of those people that may serve on other task forces, their body-worn camera rules go with the potential task force that goes along with that. And I can attest to that it's difficult when we have multiple different agencies and different rules for body-worn camera, and it can make it difficult. And usually the federal agencies are the ones that they have to follow in those cases. And then the next one was logging shower access, which they agreed to do in the gyms. And so we're thankful that they did that. That was from a 23 case. So that now is part of a drop-down menu for them, as you can see. And then the next part of that particular policy request was to ask for CLERB complaints to be in their packets. They set forth the procedures by which the information is done by their correctional officers that are helping them in either the transition process or throughout their process. And that's how they're going to continue to do that. They aren't going to then provide that in that. It was asked in the complaint packet. So our complaint packet to go so that it made sure that every IP got that. So the access stays with the correctional officers.
Thank you. And as it relates to the showers, I just wanted to also comment that they did agree to mark in the record, is that a Jim's record?
Jim's
Jim's
yep.
record,
Got that
when a
right.
shower was offered and the shower was refused. That was a case that we had that someone had said they had not been offered it, but the sheriff said that they had refused. So now we are asking for them to record that. I'm sorry, go ahead.
And then the last one is they agreed to two different requests made by this board in 22 case about a no negative contact orders and a training bulletin that went out to the officers. That was included in the packet on the statement, and so they did that. And then also there was a question about mandating the supervising deputy to notify central control on intercoms when there was a medical emergency. They do have policies in place for that, and they cited the M5L, which is one that we've regularly brought forth to this board when we are discussing those death cases in medical emergencies. So they have done that, and then they have the access to the radios at all times, which is allowed under their policy as well. So
They did make a revision, though.
yes.
Okay.
They did. And so
thank you.
That was the extent of those responses. I think we're now down to about half a dozen outstanding policy recommendations that So the number's coming down.
Starting to catch up. Any questions from the board for Mr. Kalina about the policy responses we received? Okay, you want to, we move to the nominating committee chair and committee members. So recall last month, we talked about a nominating committee of the board to nominate new officers for the executive officer positions, and seems like we are a little bit ahead of schedule. So I think at that time, we were supposed to announce that a nominating committee should be formed. We did form the nominating committee, so in the interim, your role, the two of you, was to select a chair and to collect the nominations, and if you want to give us a report on that, that would be great.
Okay, the nominating committee consists of myself and Dr. Brown. And we determined that I should be the chair of the nominating committee. And I did move ahead with a solicitation of nominations. I received 5 responses from the 7 board members. And so we will be prepared to discuss, at the next monthly meeting.
Thank you. We now move to board member comment. Any comments from the board? Dr. Brown, is that?
I would just like to thank the community's participation, stepping forward and talking to us and telling us what they're experiencing out there from our law enforcement brothers and sisters. And we believe us. We really take that to heart and try to do what we can. Just like we have attorneys, everybody have attorneys, there's processes. We try to follow the law, just like everybody else has to follow the law. But I don't know if I can speak for my fellow board members, but I feel comfortable in saying that we hear you. We hear you. And we see you too. So with that, I'll yield back to Madam Chair.
I'll just second your comments. Thank you. Anyone else? Okay. We will move on to board member query for our sheriff and probation liaisons. Mr. Perkins?
All right. Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
I got Dr. Brown. I wrote down your request about de-escalation training.
Yes, sir.
So EO Kalina, if you want to send that to me, I'll see what I can set up.
Okay.
Just before I take any other questions, tonight's my last meeting. It's a quick turnaround and got about a week's notice. We call it March Madness. Everyone retires in March. So, that's when all these movements take place. But I've been here 2 years as a lieutenant, 3 years as a sergeant. So break in between for several years. But it's been an honor to work with all of you again. I appreciate the board. I appreciate all your public service. I know it's a tough job, and you guys all volunteer time and put a lot of time and effort into these cases. So I appreciate that. And I'd like to also give a special thanks to all the investigators. They all work very, very hard. Although I've only worked with Brett for about 6 months now, I'm very impressed by his professionalism and his hard work ethic and his ethics. And I know he's working really hard to take CLERB to continue it, to go great places. So I appreciate that relationship. Like Brett said, sometimes you don't always see eye to eye on some things, but we have that relationship, we have that communication, and like Brett said, even I do what I can to make sure you get what you need, even if it's an emergency that you guys created, because I know you're staffing. I want to make sure you get what you need, because I don't want to see you guys fail. So I appreciate the professionalism, and special thanks to Lynn. I've worked with Lynn for 5 years. I can't think of a harder worker as far as investigator and ethical person. So it's been great working with you. So replacement. So I would have loved to bring my replacement tonight. The only reason he's not here is because he's very, very far away on a pre-planned vacation. So, but he will be here. Good news is I don't think I could have picked a better replacement if I had handpicked somebody to continue giving you the quality of service. But his name's Joe Jarjura. And he's got, I'll let him, give his resume, but he's got an extensive history, in patrol investigations and training. And so even though I'm not going to be here officially, I'll still be around for the coming months to get him up to speed. And I'm finishing up, some more policy recommendations, which I'll continue to help him with. So, and then you got Sergeant Cardy and Sergeant Mario behind me that are working hard. And so everything's going to pretty much continue as normal. So, but it's, sorry.
Go ahead and complete your,
I'm sorry.
go ahead and complete your report. I'm sorry.
Yeah. But anyway, it's been an honor working with you all again. So, and I'm here. Do you have any questions?
Questions for Mr. Yes, Dr. Brown.
I have a question, but I have a comment. I'd like to
Go
say
ahead.
to you that, we appreciate your service, and we've learned a lot from you. We thank you for everything that you all do for, and we know when we say things or do things, we're not talking about we're just talking about the deputies that don't do it right.
Right.
Okay. So we don't mean to say, when we say things like, the deputy sheriff, the sheriff department does, we're talking about the ones that don't follow the rules and don't protect people's life like they're sworn to do. Those are the ones that we're talking about. We know that 98, 99% of them are just excellent, good people. It's the few that speaks to the public,
Yeah.
So
Thank you. I
for
appreciate that.
Thank you for your service.
You're welcome.
Mr. Mendelson.
Lieutenant, where are you being transferred to?
I will be the commander of the Lakeside substation. So out of the Santee command.
Long
So,
way, LT.
was that?
It's a long way from civilization, LT.
Yeah. So it's a great station, some great deputies, and I look forward to it. And so nice change to get back in uniform. And so.
Anyone else? Ms. Kina Ayub.
I have a logistical question and I don't know if I can ask it, but I'm going to ask it anyways. The vehicles that the sheriffs drive, are they equipped with a laptop? And is that laptop able to access ARGIS, CAD, and the DMV?
The vast majority of patrol cars do have a MDT, mobile data terminal. It's similar to a laptop. Some agencies have laptops that actually come out of the car. I think these ones are fixed, but yeah, it has access to, as long as it's up and running, the majority of the vehicles in patrol have access to various, law enforcement databases. Now, obviously there's some cars in detentions that might not have a computer, and all depends if it's up and running. But yeah, in general.
Thank you.
I got a question about body-worn cameras, if you don't mind, Madam Chair.
Dr. Brown.
How often are they trained about making sure they have those body-worn cameras activated when they're doing something, when they're trying, involved in whatever?
Yeah.
It seems like we get quite a few reports of the body-worn camera wasn't on or what have you. If I can ask this question,
Yeah, well, there's, and I tell you, we do, if we see any trends or anything, we do have training bulletins and try to remind people, but yeah, there's different, sometimes people forget to turn them on too late, or, maybe mute it and they don't say why, or a lot of times the situation unfolds quickly. Sometimes they're not thinking about that. They're seeing their partner fighting or something, they're going to run in there, and which is, understandable, but then they're forgetting to document in the report. So yeah, I rarely though have I seen a situation where, someone just routinely doesn't turn it on or turns it off when they're not supposed to. I don't see anything like that. So, but yes, we do try to refresh people's trainings, multiple times a year with training bulletins, or, obviously if there's a deputy that, we're reviewing reports and we've seen, on this person has a pattern, obviously it's going to be addressed, but I don't usually see that.
Anything else? Thank you. Thank you for your service to us. And we look forward to meeting your, I don't want to say replacement, but our new liaison. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
And is there a liaison from the probation department? Sorry, I didn't recognize you because you're not person that was introduced to us last month. So
She's on vacation and she will be here next month. My name is Brian Barry. I'm a supervising probation officer assigned to the Professional Standards and Training Division and a former CLERB liaison. And I wasn't told to expect any questions, but I'm happy to answer what I can.
I don't know who told you that, but are any questions for Mr. Barry? Is that right? Tonight? Ms. Kina-Youb.
I proposed a question last time and the 6 times before that, asking about ADA compliance for the youth that are held within the probation department. I was told that mental health does not pertain to that because it's under HIPAA rules. All I want is clarification on why it doesn't fall in this capacity that you're holding these youth 24/7, and yet your officers aren't allowed to know that they have neurodivergent qualities.
That's a good question. I haven't worked institutions in about 4 years. However, the part about HIPAA sounds very familiar. Our officers aren't told every single thing about every youth that comes into custody.
I understand that completely, but given the reaction and how many youth can go into fight or flight and the reaction that would come from an officer dealing with them, wouldn't that be something that's necessary considering the sheriff's department does comply?
I can't speak to why or how the sheriff is allowed to comply with that.
Thank you.
What I'm going to recommend, I'm going to ask Ms. Hakak if she'd do me the favor of having someone on the CLERB staff transcribe Ms. Kina-Youb's questions tonight. And I'm just going to ask you, Mr. Barry, for a commitment that at our next month's meeting, someone from the probation department will come back with a fulsome response to Ms. Kina-Youb's question, because she has asked it a few times. And I think it would be fair for her to get a response by
Absolutely.
next month. Thank you.
Anything else?
I'll get that and make sure I pass that on to the new liaison.
Anything else? Okay, with that, I will ask our council to call us into closed session.
Yes, thank you, Chair, board members. On tonight's closed session, we have 13 matters as set forth in the agenda pursuant to Government Code Section 54957, Public Employee Discipline, Dismissal, and Release. That is item 12A, and 12B is Public Employee Performance Evaluation, Executive Officer pursuant to Subdivision B1 of Government Code Section 54957, and that completes my read-in.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for coming tonight, and maybe see you again. That concludes our open session, and we will return to closed session in 5 minutes.
Minutes. Okay, I need to go to the restroom and get me something to drink.
Watch your phone.
Okay, I'm trying to take this thing off.